Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Texas Fund AMA today. I'm Jill. I'm the venture principal here at Capital Factory. For those of you that are not familiar with Capital Factory, we are the center of gravities for entrepreneurs in Texas, and our goal is really to unite all of Texas and the four main cities here, Dallas, Austin, Houston, and San Antonio, so that we can compete against the coast and other large tech hubs. I run our Texas Fund, which is our latest venture fund that we launched on April 1st of last year. And our goal is to invest in all the best early stage tech companies here in Texas. Today, I am joined by Ben Lamm, the co-founder and CEO of Colossal.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Ben, good to see you. How are you?
It's good. I'm still recovering from South by, but I'm here.
Oh my goodness, I know. I'm very stuffy after South by. I still have a head cold that I'm recovering from, but it was 10 days of so much fun and great connections.
Yeah, it was great. It's great. It's good to have everyone back. Like I think the last 2 years have been it's definitely been missed.
Oh my goodness, I know. Well, this is actually my first South by because when I had started with Capital Factory, it was in 2019. And so I missed the first one. And then the next 2 years were a little chaotic. So this is the real first one that I've been to, which was awesome.
Yeah, it was great. It was amazing. It was like I forgot how much I actually missed it. And then now I'm kind of paying for it this week with
I know.
trying to
Now we're like,
recover.
that was too much for us. Well, awesome. I'm glad we were both able to go, and it was great to see you there, of course. Well, you have an incredible background, and we have a very short period of time, so I definitely want to jump in. I know the audience has a lot of great questions for you as well. But just to kick it off, do you mind sharing a brief background of yourself and your journey to now founding Colossal?
Yeah, I've always been in Texas, so I split my time between Dallas and Austin. Born in Austin, raised in Texas. Always been really passionate about technology entrepreneurship. Always been really passionate about Texas. Obviously, have raised money on both the coast, but also here in Texas as well. I've founded a handful of companies over the years. One was acquired by Accenture, Chaotic Moon, and then Andrew and I had a company that got acquired by Zynga, and then a company, a conversational intelligence platform that got acquired by Conversable. And then before starting Colossal, I was really focused on enterprise AI at the intersection of critical infrastructure, space, and defense. Handed over the reins to an incredible CEO that's continuing to grow Hypergiant. And now I'm focusing on all things de-extinction and synthetic biology.
Incredible. So you have been involved with Capital Factory longer than I have. Your time with us predates my time with the firm. We've had several of your companies be a part of our portfolio, and you've also helped shape the future of Capital Factory as a partner and a board member with us, which is awesome. So thank you for that. But how did you originally get involved with Capital Factory, and why did you choose to partner with Capital Factory as an advisor and investment partner? And why do you continue to choose to do so today?
Well, Capital Factory has been really great, and Josh and the entire team, folks that were at Capital Factory, people that were at Capital Factory that I got to know, like JD, who then left Capital Factory, that I have great relationships with. But early on, I mean, when you're before Capital Factory really kind of started to branch out to other parts of Texas, which hopefully I feel like I was like somewhat involved in that. But when we were just when Capital Factory was just 100% focused on Austin, and being an Austin technology entrepreneur, you obviously want to go to the programming, you want to be a part of the community. I met a lot of great partners there. I met a lot of great investors there. Some of my best friends in the community came from Capital Factory because it really kind of is kind of that kind of like mosh pit of all of that, right? Like incredible startups, incredible founders, incredible service providers, incredible partners, investors, and then just the community at large, right? And so like some of the coast and others kind of felt more competitive, and like Capital Factory really did a good job over the years, like making it cohesive in Texas, and said we're going to do things a little bit different. We're going to make it cohesive. We're really going to create kind of a community and family that people can be a part of, regardless of whether they're working on some SaaS startup or some extinct animal startup.
The whole gamut. We try.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's been super fun to open all the new offices. I know you were part of the Dallas office opening. We've done now Houston and San Antonio, so it's been really fantastic to bring all of Texas together to hopefully compete against the coasts. But as you were mentioning, I mean, you're a serial entrepreneur. You've founded a handful of companies. Most people don't even found a single company in their lifetime. But what I think is really unique about you is that a lot of your companies have been in very different industries that require, very different skill sets. I'm curious for you, what has been the decision process, every time you start a new company, like when deciding which industry you want to disrupt next, how do you kind of go about that?
Well, first, I have great partners, right, and co-founders, right? Like I've done numerous deals with Andrew, who's also a partner at Capital Factory, and so ensuring that you have incredible partners is kind of key to it, right? Like sometimes it's my idea, sometimes it's his idea, sometimes we come to it together. But I think that speaking only for myself, I really like to learn new markets, right? So like my last business, I was really passionate about AI. Andrew and I touched on it in our previous company in Conversal was kind of like AI light, but really wanted to kind of get deeper into how it could apply and then how it could actually apply to military use cases. And so, before that, I'd never done anything with military. You guys were starting to ramp up, the Center for Defense Innovation. So it's kind of like perfect timing for me so that I could leverage some of the relationships that you guys were building, but I'd never done anything in defense. And so starting to, now we're doing, work with Strategic Missile Command. Now we're working with NORAD, Northcom. Now, we're working with different divisions of the Army, Future Labs and robotics groups and whatnot. So it's always fun for me to kind of learn new industries. I did think that my next company would be in synthetic biology. I have always been really passionate about genetics, and I really wanted to build something that was focused on genetics, focused on how do we apply software and technology and hardware to genetics? And I do believe that the world of synthetic biology is the future. I think it will be as transformative or more transformative than AI or the internet. And so always been really passionate about it. And always been kind of like studying biology kind of on the side is something that I'm just passionate about. And then when there was an opportunity, I really thought that I would potentially go build my next company at the intersection of really software and computational biology and AI. That kind of morphed, and so applying those technologies into synthetic biology, and then having the ability to combat climate change and species preservation. That's kind of another personal passion of mine. It kind of just was like the perfect storm, and so I always look for new markets that I think are going to be big. Like I don't think that AI is going away. I don't think that space tech is going to go away. I don't think that synthetic biology is going to go away. So I always try to look for those kind of new frontiers that I'm, really, really passionate about learning.
For sure. I mean, each of them are so unique. And I know this last one, we were like, interesting. Okay, Ben's doing something very different than he's done before, but obviously we love you and love to back you. And so it was something we were pretty stoked to be a part of. But with all of these companies and founding the companies, you've also experienced a lot of exits too. As you were saying, like Simply Interactive was acquired by Agile. You had Chaotic Mood acquired by Accenture, Team Chaos acquired by Zynga, Conversal by LivePerson. So there's been quite a few. I can't even list them all. But I want to focus in on your exits for a little bit, since it's something that we get asked a lot by our founders, especially around timing, is like, how do you know when it's the right time to actually exit your venture? I think it's something that a lot of folks struggle with, is it the right time now when the company is doing well, but maybe it could be doing better later on? I'm curious how you thought about that with each of the exits that you've been a part of.
I don't think there's a right time. I don't think that it's something that you can time from a market perspective, right? I think that everything that has been acquired was more bought than sold. So we developed something, someone found value in it, it was then acquired, and so as kind of like an ADD driven serial entrepreneur, like there's if someone comes in and it's kind of the right kind of like deal and the right inflection of value for what we built, then I always take a look at it. I do think that there are some of the things that we've built over the years that could have been that were great exits, but they could have been bigger, right? Like I still think that we're at the I've said this recently, and Andrew will probably like be happy or mad that I'm giving him the credit on this, but we like I still think that we're kind of at the dawn of like conversational interfaces. And so I think that what we built with Conversal was incredibly powerful. we had a couple other interesting market opportunities that were coming to us. We had opportunities to invest and help start a couple other companies. And then we had a couple of large publicly traded companies, including live personnel, really wanted the technology in the company. And so you can never really time things right? But I'm so a believer kind of in the universe and that everything happens for a reason. But sometimes you do sell early. Like I still think that some of the stuff that we did, like there's still companies today that haven't gotten to where we were with Conversable, right? And it was like it could have been, I think that while it was a great company and had a great technology stack and a great team, and had a great outcome, I think it could have been even a more insane outcome, just given kind of the nature of what we built and how far ahead we were, of the game there. And so you can't really time it, and you can't really look back. I try to always kind of focus on the future, and but yeah, I mean there are certain things like Colossal, for one, is not something that we are looking at, or even would entertain an exit for a very long time. I think this is a very long-term play as massive applications to helping to create ecosystems and preserving the 50% of biodiversity that we're going to lose in the next, between now and 2050. So I really think that this is something that, really needs attention and will need attention for quite some time.
For sure. And I suppose I'm curious to learn about more so the companies that you've sold to, right? So you've sold to private companies and you've sold to public companies that are on the NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, and things of that sort. What are kind of the differences between selling to a private company versus a public? And I'm curious if you have a preference or the pros and cons behind it.
I don't think I have a preference. I think that they're all exits are painful, right? And at some point you've like built this team and this culture and this great technology set, and you're handing that over to someone else. It's like there's an exchange of value there, right? And so you're giving up this thing that you built that's awesome and amazing, and then you kind of also have to kind of watch what people do with it, right? Like I don't think that everyone always does what you hope with it, which is weird. But I do think that I do think that ultimately, it's really up to when you go through that exchange, letting go is like really important. And I learned that very, very early. I think that when you sell to a publicly traded company, it is typically a harder process. I've sold to 3 publicly traded companies, and that's a harder process than a private sale. At least in my experience. Maybe others have had it different, just because there's more rules, there's typically more stakeholders involved. But what I will say is that they're all pretty painful and interesting, and you learn from each one, right? And so one of the things that I learned is that like I'm not the guy that's going to go with the company. I tried that once, and I hated it. Yeah, they hated me, I hated them. It was a mutual thing, but it was honest, right? And so like we could like, and now a lot of them are my friends. Like we've like come back together, which is great. But so like I'm someone that likes to build, and I don't think that I'm really like I advise a couple funds and a couple of other companies that I'm on the boards of and help with. And I can, if I'm in that role, I think I can succeed. But knowing kind of what you're good at and what you're not good at is important. And I know that if I build something, I either have to hand the reins off. I don't think that I can go, necessarily be employed.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of differences that happen, once you get to the other side. And it's hard, I'm sure, to let the baby go, but on to the next thing. And you've created so many truly incredible companies that have changed our world. But one that I want to focus on is one of your most recent ones, Colossal. And for this one, you decided to shift industries quite a bit and launch Colossal, which is a genomics research company, with the intent to bring back the woolly mammoth and perhaps other extinct species as well. And this is a massive vision. I mean, this is, quite a few years out. I'm curious, why was this the company that you decided to work on next? I mean, you've gotten a ton of media and press around it, and I think it's a question a lot of people have been asking.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely got a lot of feedback. A lot of it's been great. Some have been weird. I've gotten a lot of Jurassic Park memes and DMs, and like everything from songs to famous quotes from it. But ultimately, I met George Church, who's like the father of synthetic biology. He's massively influential in the world, and I think that he's just done such an incredible job to advance like the entire industry forward. And I felt that we were at a time that the intersection of biology and the creation of synthetic biology and leveraging artificial intelligence and automation could really create a lot of technologies that could be massively valuable, from everything ranging from combating climate change to human healthcare. And I felt that this is kind of the right time to do it, right? Like we have the right amount of compute power, we have got the right amount of artificial intelligence and automation tools. We understand enough about ML modeling, and I wouldn't say we understand quite enough about biology, but we're getting there. And so it's kind of the right combination. I feel like synthetic biology has the potential to deliver on kind of like everything from like genetically modified organisms to make our world better, to life extension, to new type of therapeutics to cure different disease states. And so it's an incredibly fascinating field. It's very, very broad, right? And so when you take a technology and software point of view in it, I think that's also kind of needed. So after I had this meeting with George, I thought I was just going to go build a synthetic biology, computational biology focused company. What was interesting was all of the technologies that we felt that were massively life changing for humanity, and could put a real dent in the universe in a positive way, could all come out of a de-extinction initiative. And so what was interesting, it was building a company where you have your North Star of de-extincting species that could also be helpful from an ecological impact, while developing technologies that could be massively transformative for animal and human healthcare. And so big, hard challenge. There are days where I'm like, why don't I
do B2B SaaS?
Why don't I create an e-commerce company and call it a day? But I like working with people that are much smarter than me. I like learning new industries, and I think a lot of people talk about doing that, but they just don't actually do it. I can say that the smartest people at this company are just unbelievable, and I mean they just blow your mind. The women and men we have at Colossal are just, it's insane. Like every day I'm learning something new and blown away by it. And the technologies that we're developing, that some of which we've licensed and bought, and some of them that we're in the process of developing, like they're as transformative for humanity as the mammoth, right? And so in space, in the space industry, there's this thing known as the horizon effect, and it's kind of like how astronauts' worldviews and almost brain chemistry changes after they go to space and they see the curvature of their Earth, they see the horizon, and it's an interesting documented phenomenon. And I think that we don't have a name for it, but we're hopeful that some of the things that we're developing will have a similar effect with connecting humanity to the planet and to nature. And so, the first time that we see species back on this planet, some after thousands of years, some after hundreds of years, that mankind had a role in their extinction, and showing that we now have technologies to reverse that and also reverse the impacts of that ecosystem. I think that's a moment in history that will never be the same. And so, I just feel very fortunate to be a steward of George's vision and working with all these people that are much smarter than me.
No, absolutely. I think it's really interesting what you said about, all the different technologies that you guys discover along the way that you might even not know that you're looking for yet, right? Because the mammoth is a ways out. But in order to get to the mammoth, you're obviously exploring so many different things and working with so many different technologies. I'm curious, for you, what has been the most surprising thing that perhaps you guys have discovered, or things that you've started working on? I know you mentioned stuff about like the biodiversity and working on those initiatives. But yeah, I'd just love to learn more about that.
Well, we've had a flood of interest, right? And so, what's been incredible, and from a response perspective, is we've had incredibly talented international collaborators, nonprofits, and labs reach out to us that have technologies that we didn't even know about, right? And then also projects that they didn't know about. And so we're publicly talking about the Mammoth, and that's kind of like what we're focusing on publicly right now. We are developing some pretty interesting software tools that we think can be massively applicable to human healthcare, that we'll probably be talking about more in the coming months. We are working on some unique delivery mechanisms and editing tools that we think will make multiplex editing and being able to edit multiple genes at once more efficient. And we think they can be pretty big game changers, for the industry. And then looking at technologies like, synthetic wombs and how we can do ex utero development of species is just incredibly fascinating field. And so I can't get too deep into it, but I've spent all week with one of our new colleagues that we'll probably talk about later this year on another de-extinction project, and just getting the depth of knowledge of some of these people and some of the scientific breakthroughs that they've made that almost seem like science fiction. It's just incredible. And so there's incredible work that's done in all of these labs. And I think that the published papers and scientific community gets the benefit of it, but it doesn't always reach, how does it reach, modern day consumers or like parents in like Iowa? And so what's interesting for us is I think that we have an opportunity to take these technologies out of the labs, iterate on them, combine them with technologies that we're developing them, and then show that power not just back into the scientific or business community or the broader biotech community, but also do it in a way that has an impact to all consumers that may not care about biotech. Because there's a lot of people that we're getting support from with Colossal that don't care about biotech, right? They're either they're not all scientists, they're not all conservationists, they're not all ethicists. There's also just like random interesting person on the street that's like, what you guys are doing is amazing. Here's how I can help. And we're seeing that even with our investor base. I've never had an investor base of people like Thomas Toll and Jim Breyer and Tim Draper and Marshall Sandman that have been so helpful. Where typically, as an entrepreneur, you're asking your investors for connections, intros, or specific things at certain points. This has been a different experience for me where they're pinging me. They're like, do you need anything? Just checking in. How can I help? And it's really interesting, just kind of the support that we're getting, and then how we can apply that support to bring technologies to market and to the broader, consumer industries. That's just super fascinating.
Oh, it's so cool. And I think, the first time people hear about it, they almost think it's a joke sometimes. I remember even when I submitted the investment to our lawyers to, review everything, they thought it was an April Fool's Day joke because at your last round, one of your previous rounds we participated in was around April. And I was like, no, it's not a joke. Like, we're actually doing this. And they're like, oh my God, like, okay, this is actually really cool then. So it's definitely funny to hear people's reactions, and especially, how to get people that are, as you said, not in the community to care about these things. Whether that's, through getting them excited about the woolly mammoth or, giving a kid a little stuffed animal of it to get them, passionate and excited too. But
people,
go ahead.
I also just don't think that people are starting to talk about climate change, right? Which is great. And people understand that, it's important that CO2 emissions in the atmosphere and kind of the tipping point for adding, temperatures to the global world. I think people are understand that now and are having really good, are starting to make progress both in individual life choices and with governments and regulation on industries. At the same time, I don't think enough people know about kind of like that between now and 2050, it's not just, the results of climate change are not just carbon in the atmosphere at a higher temperature. It's rising sea levels. It's like things people talk about. People don't talk enough about, that we will lose up to 50% of all biodiversity. And there's been incredibly scary studies done that shows that if we lose keystone species in certain ecosystems, those ecosystems degrade at an alarming rate and fall apart. And so the trickle down effect all the way down to like, food scarcity and food security for humans is there. And so how can we play a role in that, and how can we bring awareness? I think that outside of the cool factor of what we're working on in the technologies, just also bringing awareness to loss of biodiversity and loss of this incredible kind of like fauna that we have, that could be gone forever if we don't do something about it. And then also has an application negatively to us, is something that not enough people are talking about.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, we've already experienced, a massive loss of species as the world has, evolved, and as humans, produce different technologies that perhaps are not so good for the planet, right? But when you and your team were deciding to bring back extinct species, why was it the woolly mammoth? We had dinosaurs and saber-toothed tigers and all these, absolutely wild animals that could probably elicit the same effect. Like, why was it the woolly mammoth?
So, and just to get this out of the way, you can't bring back dinosaurs, and anyone that tells you can is just wrong. Like, you can't bring back dinosaurs. We're in a world of what we call genetic reconciliation, right? So it's like we're combining genes from the closest phylogenetic relative, in this case the Asian elephant and the woolly mammoth, to express the phenotypes or physical attributes that we're looking for cold tolerance, right? And so an Asian elephant today is like 99.6% a woolly mammoth. And so when you start to think about why the woolly mammoth, I think there's a couple of really key things. Number one, we have tissue samples, right? Like, we have the best way to preserve tissue samples that's thousands of years old is in the cold. We have frozen tissue samples that we can take so that we can start to construct parts of the genome and understand kind of what is the difference between the Asian elephant and the African elephant and a woolly mammoth, right? So start to understand kind of like what genes are being expressed and how they're being expressed differently to exude the trait that we're looking for, whether it's a molecular focused trait like on how hemoglobin is produced, or a physical attribute like a woolly hair or a dome cranium or small ears or whatnot. And so, so one, we had the DNA, right, and we had a close enough phylogenetic relative, being the Asian elephant, to do this. Number one. Number two is, I guess, an underlying thing is we had the technologies, right? Like, there's no like scientific breakthroughs that we have to make on genomic engineering or sequencing or computational biology to do it. We can do it. It gets more efficient with technology, but we can just do it with brute force. So that was our plan, and then we're like innovate with technologies along the way. And then a second reason on the mammoth is that George is actually pretty far down the path, right? Like, he'd been working on this for 6 years. He'd been thinking about it for 20 years. So you had a lot of you had one of the greatest minds of our time thinking about this problem, specifically around mammoths for a very, very long period of time, which is amazing. And then also elephants are endangered, and without like human intervention, they will go extinct in our lifetime. And so thinking about how we can build technologies to help the elephant population, and most people don't know this, but everyone thinks about, oh, it's like hunting and poaching, which is terrible. But actually, the two leading causes of death in elephants, one is EEHV, which is a herpes virus. We're collaborating with the lab working to eradicate that, right? Like, that kills 25% of all Asian elephants at the time of weaning. Like, that's a massive number of deaths from a virus that we have the tools to make a vaccine. So we're working with a group to make a vaccine. Another leading cause of death is just human elephant conflict, right? And so, like, you put elephants with humans too close, it just doesn't work. And we are encroaching on their habitats, and loss of habitat due to kind of like urbanization is a major issue. So you can create a cold tolerant lineage of elephants, put them back in their ancestral domain by giving them the genetic tools of their closest living or extinct relative. You solve that problem. You use genomics to create therapeutics in vaccines for EHV. You solve that problem, right? And so there's not like the population density in the Arctic Circle isn't what it is in like Mumbai. So it's very, very different. And so if you do those things, and then what's interesting is that with specifically, there's a concept called Arctic rewilding. There's also this kind of halo effect of like, you could start to restore the degraded ecosystem of the Arctic by reintroducing mammoths back into the Arctic. And so those kind of like combination of like having the technology, having the genome, having a close enough living surrogate, having an ecological reason for potential Arctic rewilding for carbon sequestration and methane suppression, and then saving elephants, like that just kind of became like the perfect Venn diagram of where to start. And we were fortunate that George had kind of a head start on it, given that he'd been working on it for so long.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, his research, just the brief stuff we've read on it, and the work he's been doing for years and years is truly incredible. And I'm curious from your perspective. One of the notes that I got from a few investors that were interested to participate in this deal was that on the opposite side of the table, you guys are kind of playing God in a sense, right? And I think for people who might be particularly religious, or other people who have views on survival of the fittest and what's meant to be will be, what do you kind of say to those people about the work that you all are doing and its impact?
Yeah, I mean, I look at what the impact and purpose is behind the work, right? I come from a religious family. I'm religious. Many of our investors are religious,
Mhm.
and many of them aren't. And so for me, I think it's really about impact and what we're trying to do with species preservation. And so I don't look at it as playing God. I look at
Mhm.
it as we as humanity should be good stewards of this planet, and we should value the biodiversity on this planet just as much as ourselves. We
Mhm.
share this planet. This is not a human planet. This is a human plus a lot of other stuff planet, right? And so we need to be good stewards of it. So regardless of like who or what or random chance gave us this incredible planet, we need to be good stewards of it, right? And we haven't. Unfortunately, humans are really good at being humans, and that's not the best for the rest of the incredible biodiversity that we share this planet with. So I think it's on us to use the positive aspects of humanity, the creativity of humanity, the intelligence, the technologies that we develop as humans, unlike other species, to help
Mhm.
the other species that we share this planet with. And so I don't look at it as playing God at all. I think it is being we are responsible, regardless of what your religious or non-religious beliefs are. We are responsible for being good stewards for what we were given, regardless of how we got it, right? Whether it was
Mhm.
given to us, whether it was created, whether it just showed up randomly in a blink, whatever it was. Like, in who cares? The fact is that we have this incredible thing that we should all be very, very grateful for. We should wake up and say, "Oh my gosh, this is incredible," and we need to do stuff better for this planet. And so that's how I look at it. And we're not doing weird stuff with humans. We're not doing anything like that. We are really trying to ensure that we're developing technologies and helping preserve biodiversity. And I don't know how anyone, regardless of what your belief structure is, can argue that, unless you just hate animals, and then you're not for us. So I mean, we can't
I don't care
that,
about you
that,
anyways,
that
so.
subset of people that just absolutely hate animals or elephants.
Mhm.
I don't know how to relate to them, because I
Yeah,
may not be there.
not the target
I'm
demographic.
I'm gonna lose the Pepsi challenge on that one for sure.
Got you, got you. Well, no, I think it's very well said that we're supposed to be good stewards of this planet, and I think humans are particularly good at being selfish. And it's time to open up our eyes and make sure that we are taking care of the planet in the proper way. And I know a lot of people have heard about Colossal. From my understanding, you guys had over 1 billion impressions, media impressions. I mean, you guys have
20,
topped every news
yeah,
headline. I mean, from the very small news outlets to, covers of papers. It's insane. I'm seeing Colossal everywhere, which I absolutely love. It's great. Was this strategic? Was it organic? And how are you guys kind of handling all of it? I'm sure you're getting inundated with requests for interviews all the time.
yeah. So we're trying to be thoughtful because everyone's like insanely busy. We actually, I don't know what the latest numbers are. I probably should, but we got 22 billion
Wow.
media
Okay, I was
impressions.
very off.
Yeah, I mean, still, it's a lot. Either way, it's a lot. 22 billion media impressions at launch. I think there were 5,600 unique articles written the first week alone of launch.
Wow.
So it was a very big launch. It went viral. We have incredible teams that worked on it, and we were very, very thoughtful on the approach. More so on kind of like the why, like talking about conservation, talking about Arctic rewilding, talking about de-extinction and why it's good for the planet. And so we were very, very thoughtful on kind of the approach to launch. We thought it would be big because it's like,
Mhm.
George Church is amazing. We have an incredible team. You combine all that around something as bold as de-extinction, and de-extinction is not a new like we did not invent the concept, right? Like there's groups of folks that have been talking about de-extinction for a long time, have been working on some parts of it, but no one had really taken, like, this was a major step forward for the industry, for de-extinction, and for thoughtful disruptive conservation. And so so the launch was, it surpassed our expectations because we thought it would be big. We didn't realize it would be quite this big. And I think part of it is that the reason why is that people know that George has been working on this. He's been open about it, but people also know that at the end of the day, we have the technologies to do this. And now we have the right additional team and funding to do this. And I think that that got everyone even more excited. It went from this, like, we know you can do it, and we know you're working on it in the lab, but you got a million other things going on too. Oh wow, this is happening. And I think that moment created kind of like this, like, inflection point for everyone, that they got really, excited. And I think it's also weird, but great timing, right? It's like we've all been stuck inside. We
Mhm.
had a previous administration that just didn't believe in science.
Mhm.
When you start getting, like, with COVID, and having to be trapped in one location, and you start to think about what's important for you. A lot of people got wanderlust. People have, like, started just to remote work and travel. And so, I think people are like, I think there's a hunger for science. I think there's a hunger for delivering the world that we were promised in tomorrow and today. I think people want that now, right?
Mhm.
And I think that the last 2 years, 2.5 years, kind of like bottled that up. And so I think for us it was kind of a perfect storm of, doing something that was meaningful, but also really cool,
Mhm.
and doing it, and people seeing the path to actually getting there with that hunger. It's just kind of the right recipe.
Mhm. Absolutely. I mean, congratulations on 22 billion impressions the first week. That is pretty much unheard of. I'm sure a great case study could be done on you all. But I
Yeah.
mean, I've true. Every time I read an article, it's hard not to feel hopeful for the future and inspired by what you all are doing. So one, thank you for that. But something that I love about Colossal is that it is founded in Texas, and you founded a lot of your previous companies in Texas too, especially ones that maybe even a decade ago it was almost seemed like as impossible to start a company here in Texas as opposed to Silicon Valley or New York City, especially if you're a tech focused company. But for you, why did you choose to stay in Texas to start the companies? And I mean, I'm sure you raised money on the coast and things of that sort. But what was so great about Texas, and I guess what is now great about Texas, that you've decided to stay here?
I feel like the rest of the world is, like, catching up, but the people are just awesome, right? Like, the people are great. The people are smart. The people are hungry. The people are diverse.
Mhm.
Sometimes I think there was a worldview forever that, oh, like, Texas is just this, like, super right wing thing. It's like, do you ride a horse to work? And it's like, that is like this weird stereotype
Sometimes.
that sometimes, but yeah, maybe. I mean, if you're into it, great. Um, we're not against it. It's like eco-friendly. Do it. But there was kind of that worldview of Texas, and I think that for the next, now, like, if you look at kind of like the people coupled with the fact that it's centrally located, we've got great infrastructure. Like, there's 3 flights a day probably direct to Dubai, right? It's like, it's hard to beat, right? Like, you can only probably get that from, like, New York or maybe Miami and LA, right? You've got a great cost of living. You've got, incredible companies that are coming here. Like, even in Dallas alone, I think there's like 24 Fortune 500s that are headquarters here. So you could build a very large technology company and never leave the state. And so I think that kind of like the central location, the weather, the people, and the infrastructure just makes it easy. And it's also a very tax efficient state to live in, right? And it's easy. And so I don't ever see myself not living in Texas. I'm super excited that other people are, now, and other insanely brilliant people and successful people are moving to Texas and kind of get the Texas joke, because it's an awesome place to home base and build companies, and then you can always go other places. But then you always want to come back. At
Mhm.
least I do.
No, for sure. I know every time I get off the plane and land back in Austin, it's great to be home. And we've obviously seen a huge influx of talents, corporates, and capital, which is fantastic for our ecosystem here. I know there's a few rising prices here with homes and apartments and things of that sort, but as we continue to build, I'm sure they'll go down. One thing that I think was interesting that was recently announced, and I'm just curious your whole perspective on the future of taxes, but Austin's Mayor Adler, recently announced this whole Web3 initiative, essentially helping Austin incorporate, Web3 and blockchain technologies from, smart contracts to using different management tools to really make Austin more competitive with, other places like Miami that are popping up. I'm curious what you think about this initiative and also what it takes for Texas to stay on top and compete with other coasts as this, new tech hub.
Yeah, I mean, people are flocking to Texas. To everyone, people are flocking to Austin. People are flocking to Dallas. I mean, all the cities in Texas are getting just a ton of great influx of talent, and I love the new initiative. Right, like other states, like Wyoming, for example, is doing a lot for they're like doing a lot for the crypto and Web3 community, passing laws,
Mhm.
passing legislation. You have to be competitive, right? And so I think that everything that Mayor Adler is doing, and he's incredible, and he's just done an incredible job of kind of helping Austin, which has a halo effect. I'm glad that the rest of the state has kind of, for a while, it ended up being, it was like kind of like almost like competitive internally in the state, but now I really feel like that the halo effect of the success and growth of Austin, plus kind of the big infrastructure of these cities like Houston and Dallas that have been here, um, is all kind of starting to blend together in a community that's just really, really powerful. And I think that we need local and state regulations and support for these technologies. I mean, you've got incredible companies getting birthed out of all these things. The Web3 community in Austin is strong. A lot of people that have moved, from the coast. I mean, like the multi-coin guys are one of the biggest funds and most successful returning funds in the blockchain space. Started in Austin, right? Now they're international, right? So, but they're everywhere. But like you have these incredible technologies, and you have these incredible teams that are working on it. So we just need to continue to support it, because we do have the teams here to leverage these technologies and kind of push like whatever the next wave is, whether it's crypto or to extinction.
Mhm.
We have those here. So we like more and more like local and state support is just critical. And I think that we have to be competitive, not just like with taxes and infrastructure and people. We also have to be competitive with core values. And I think that we're kind of at this interesting transitional point for Texas, where there is a very diverse mix of core values here, and finding kind of that right blend. So it's not just a business friendly state, but it's also a socially friendly and a state is something that I think we're finding our way at. And sometimes that causes conflict with our governor and various mayors.
Mhm.
But I'm hopeful that we'll find that balance.
Wonderful. Well, I think it's absolutely true. I mean, this next wave of taxes and everything that's going on is really exciting. I think a lot of people are catching on to it. COVID, I mean, the silver lining in it was we did get a huge influx of folks down here, and it'll be great to see how they impact Texas. But Ben, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your involvement with Capital Factory and just really the future of Texas and letting us be a part of what you're doing with Colossal. I'm excited to see it be another success story for Texas. But appreciate your time today and look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, really appreciate it. You guys are awesome. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.